In the waning years of the Blessed Age, reptilian wings blanketed the sun. Dragons, thought to have been hunted to extinction centuries earlier, reappeared in the skies above the world of men and devastated the countryside of Orlais and Nevarra. Reading this as an epochal omen, Faustine II, divine of the Chantry, declared a new age, the Dragon Age, which in her holy wisdom she predicted would be a time of violence, upheaval, and dramatic change. Thus begins the period in which the titularly named Dragon Age game takes place. Yet this is not where the history of its world begins. Welcome to our first video on the vibrant and tumultuous continent of Thedas, where we will explore the immortal hubris of the ancient Elvhenan and the rise of the Blood Mages of Tevinter. If you wish you had the aid of elven craftsmanship in your day-to-day life, well, we can at least offer the next best thing. There's no need to stuff your pockets with the usual bulk to do this. Upgrade your daily inventory this holiday season with our sponsor Ridge at ridge.com/ww. First, there's the Ridge Wallet. This shrinks the amount of material needed to carry cards and cash, giving you a sleek and stylish wallet that is not only smaller than even the smallest wallet we had, but comes with a lifetime guarantee. It's made from military-grade materials, stopping just short of having a deflector shield, but it'll hold together when you need it to. There's space for 12 cards, and there's a band and clip system if you want to attach cash to the side as well. But you'll need your keys too, so use the Ridge Key Case, another sleek little gadget that's small, looks good, and holds 6 keys in an organized fashion, no more messy clumps of key rings. The lifetime guarantee covers this too, and Ridge offers a 99-day money-back guarantee on their products if you somehow don't prefer them to your old setup. Both make great gifts with the holidays coming along, and you can get up to 40% off in their holiday sale until December 22nd if you go to ridge.com/ww, link in the description. For over 10,000 years, the continent of Thedas has been home to advanced civilizations, capable of wondrous marvels. However, the race of humans, although nowadays the dominant species of Thedas, are relatively newer arrivals to its shores. As far back as 7,600 years before the founding of the Chantry, the elves were immortal and inherently magical people. They called themselves Elfhen, which in their tongue meant the people, and ruled a massive empire they called Elvhenan. Elvhenan was a place of arcane miracles, encompassing not only the whole of Thedas, but extending beyond the physical realm itself, the Fade. The Fade is the dimension from which all magic stems, where the consciousness of mortals travels when they dream, and where beings of pure magic, like spirits and demons, reside. In the modern Dragon Age, elves and humans enter the Fade mentally when they dream. Still, they can rarely travel there physically due to a magical barrier known as the Veil, which separates the mortal world from the metaphysical. However, in the Ancient Age, no such barrier existed, and the Elfhen walked freely in the land of dreams and built entire cities that transcended dimensions. However, few in the modern age remember the splendors of the metropolises of Elvhenan. Those who do describe them as a place of surreal beauty. One particular dreamer asks us to imagine spires of crystal twining through the branches, palaces floating among the clouds, and to imagine beings who lived forever, for whom magic was as natural as breathing. Much like all roads led to Rome in our world, in ancient Thedas, all alluvions led to Alathan, a name meaning this place of love, and the beating heart of the elven civilization of Thedas. While the children of Alathan built spires that reached the heavens, the hardy industrious Dwarven mastered the land beneath the surface. The dwarves literally carved an empire for themselves out of stone, building massive cavernous cities, known as taigs, connected by a network of enormous underground highways, called the Deep Roads. Dwarves are a race incapable of magic. Having no mental connection to the Fade, they also do not dream. However, what the Dwarven lacked in arcane aptitude, they made up for in ingenious engineering and industry. In contrast, their non-magical status made them the race best suited for mining and refining crafting with the magically volatile but extremely precious element of lyrium. While the Children of the Stone thrived, the ethereal empire above them was changing. Over time, certain powerful mages in Elvhenan had grown more and more influential, beginning as revered war generals to elders treated with ritualistic veneration, before eventually becoming seen by their people as living gods. In total, 9 elves became powerful enough to be seen as divinities. They were Elvhenan, the god of vengeance and fatherhood; Mithal, the goddess of love and motherhood; Faustine, the god of death; Durthamen, the keeper of secrets; Andruil, the goddess of the hunt; Siles, the hearth keeper; June, the god of the craft; Ghilannain, the goddess of navigation; and Fen'Harel, the maverick of the bunch, who history remembers as the Dread Wolf. The Evenuris were not benevolent gods, but fickle, spiteful, and tyrannical. Under their despotic rule, Elfhen society became more stratified, as a caste of nobles and high priests who showed complete devotion to the Evenuris were rewarded with the power to enslave vast swaths of the elven population. These slaves were branded with facial tattoos, known as Valislin, whose varying designs showed which of the Evenuris their noble owners favoured. Over the centuries, the Evenuris warred amongst themselves, sicking their sycophants and their slaves against one another in an unending narcissistic hunger to gain more worshippers. Elves did not age, but they could be wounded and killed, and thousands perished in the Evenuris' senseless wars. However, not all the Evenuris were tyrants. Mithal regularly sought to temper the more depraved inclinations of her peers, while Fen'Harel took things one step further, becoming a champion of the enslaved, lifting the Valislin off their faces and leading them in a crusade against the false gods. As the flames of revolutions ravaged Elvhenan, the Evenuris began to panic. As Fen'Harel continued to elude them, they instead set their wrathful eyes upon his dear friend Mithal. In an act of treachery, the goddess of love was slain at their hands. Consumed by grief, Fen'Harel created the Veil, the barrier which would forever separate the mortal world from the Fade. As a result, the Evenuris were permanently locked away into the realm of dreams. However, the cost of achieving this had been catastrophic. Many of Elvenhand's cities had been intrinsically tied to the Fade, and with that connection severed, they began to collapse in on themselves, while the paths between them crumbled, destroying aeons of knowledge, killing many Elfhen, and even fracturing spirits. Moreover, after their connection to the world of dreams was snapped, the elves lost their immortality, and for the first time in their history began to age. The glory days of the elves were now over. Around 3,100 years before the founding of the Chantry, the first human migrants arrived from the north. Over time, a diversity of primitive human tribes inhabited the land. Of the men who migrated south, the Alamari, Clane, Chasnid, and Avar peoples became masters of what is now Ferelden, while the lands which now make up modern Orlais and Nevarra were the domain of the Syrian, Ingirsh, and Planocene. Of the men who remained north, 4 tribes, the Carinus, Barindur, Neremenians, and Tevinters, created kingdoms for themselves. In their earliest days on the continent, mankind inevitably came into contact with the Elfhen. It seems that in some regions, these relations were precipitated by cooperation and cohabitation, while in others, such as the lands of the Neremenians, contact between the two races brought about violence. Either way, not long after first contact, the elves began withdrawing into the forests of Alathan, where their last great city of the same name was located. Later legends would claim that it was contact with humans which caused elfkind to begin aging for the first time, but as we know, they had already lost their immortality when Fen'Harel created the Veil, making it all the more mysterious as to why they decided to abandon the majority of Thedas and let mankind become the master of the continent. Originally, these early humans lived relatively primitive lives as nomads, pastoralists, or simple agriculturalists, holding to an eclectic variety of animist faiths. This status quo persisted for centuries, until the Neremenians, the oldest of the human tribes, made a discovery that would change the face of Thedas forever. Around 1,595 years before the founding of the Chantry, legend has it that a Neremenian oracle named Thalcion mastered the ability of lucid dreaming, allowing him to pass his consciousness into the Fade at will. While roaming the dream world of demons and spirits, he encountered a being known as Dumat, one of the old gods. It is unknown exactly what the old gods were, only that they were beings of unfathomable power who took the form of massive dragons and inhabited a spectral metropolis at the heart of the Fade, known as the Golden City. Whatever they were, it is said that they imparted the secrets of blood magic to Thalcyon. Humans had likely already discovered various forms of hedge magic by this point, but blood magic stood apart. Most mages cast spells by drawing on their mana, metaphysical energy within themselves, which allows them to pull energy across the veil from the Fade into the physical world. Blood mages, however, titularly use the blood of living beings to cast their spells. Using blood as fuel gives blood mages a level of sheer power that normal sorcerers simply cannot achieve, yet it comes at a high cost, for the more power a blood mage desires, the more blood must be shed, resulting in blood magic's grisly association with grotesque, ritualistic human or elven sacrifice. Because of this discovery, Thalcyon was able to become king of the Neramenians. During his reign, the worship of the old gods became the predominant faith of his people. A pantheon of 7 great worms, known as Dumat, the dragon of silence, Zezikal, the dragon of chaos, Toth, the dragon of fire, Andoral, the dragon of slaves, Euthemiel, the dragon of beauty, Rezikali, the dragon of mystery, and Lusican, the dragon of night. 1,195 years before the founding of the Chantry, Dorinius, High King of the Neramenians and descendant of Thalcyon, had united the Neramenians, Carinians and Tevinters under his rule. In so doing, Dorinius became the first Archon of an empire known as the Tevinter Imperium, the most historically impactful nation in human history. The Tevinter Imperium was a magocracy, with those who held magic powers being held in higher regard than those who did not, and blood mages occupying the highest positions in imperial society. Around the same time as its founding, the empire came into contact with the Great Thaig of Kalsharok, whose king, Endrin Stonehammer, forged an alliance with Archon Dorinius. This partnership was predicated on trade, for the Dwarven were the continent's principal supplier of lyrium, which was an essential resource the Tevinters needed to fuel their magic-based society. This bond of friendship between the Empire and the Dwarves exists to this day, making it the longest-lasting diplomatic treaty in the history of Thedas. However, for the next non-human species the Tevinter Imperium encountered, things would not go quite as smoothly. Around 1,000 years before the founding of the Chantry, as the Imperium grew eastwards, its pioneers began building settlements on the borders of the Alathan forest, a dense primeval woodland they thought to be uninhabitable. There in the trees, they encountered scouts of strange, lithe and sharp-eared people who they had never seen before. At this point in time, it had been millennia since the elves had withdrawn from the wider world, and as such, it is very possible that this generation of imperial humans had up until this point been unaware of their existence, with memories of the first contact their distant ancestors made with the Elvhen over 2,000 years ago having been lost to time. During the reign of Archon Thalassian, the Imperium sent several emissaries into the forests, but none returned alive. This did little to endear the Magisters to their pointy-eared neighbours, and in the ensuing decades, border skirmishes between the two nations became more and more frequent, while Tevinter settlers were sent into the Alathan forest to colonize the woodland. These settlements disappeared overnight, no doubt having been consumed by the forest at the coaxing of elvish magic. 981 years before the founding of the Chantry, tensions between Tevinter and the elves erupted into open war, and the Imperium unleashed the full wrath of its armies and mages upon Thedas' oldest people, cleaving a bloody path through the forest and laying siege to the elven capital of Alathan, which previously had remained hidden at the heart of the woods. While still valiant warriors and powerful mages to a degree, the elves were ultimately a shadow of their former selves, their magics a pale shadow of what their immortal ancestors had been capable of before the dread wolf created the veil. Thus they were ultimately unable to overcome the powerful blood rites of Tevinter, whose magisters allegedly were powerful enough to enthrall dragons and demons to aid in their war effort. After a 6-year siege, Alathan fell, and the magisters used blood magic to sink Thedas' most ancient and beautiful city into the earth, wiping it off the face of the world forever. Some elves managed to escape this devastation and flee to the very fringes of the continent, but most others were enslaved. For centuries thereafter, the descendants of once mighty Elvhenan would be reduced to nothing more than a slave caste, losing much of their language, culture and identity in the process. The lucky ones got to toil away under Tevinter overlordship their whole lives, and the unlucky ones became grisly sacrifices in the rituals which empowered the Magisters' blood magics. After the conquest of Orlais, the Tevinter Imperium went into expansionist overdrive as their new caste of enslaved elfen provided free labor, which drove their industry, and blood to empower their mages. Within the next 2 centuries, the empire expanded across nearly all of Thedas. Wherever the Tevinters went, they enslaved people, and soon many humans suffered the same fate as the elves, becoming thralls to despotic occultist masters. Minrathaus, the capital of the empire, became the beating heart of civilization on Thedas, and far-flung provinces were connected to it by an imperial highway of stone and magic that sprawled across the continent. With all that said, Tevinter control over their newly conquered lands was often not absolute, as tribes like the Syrian and Alamari, despite having much of their lands occupied by the Magisters, never stopped fighting back against imperial occupation. Moreover, Tevinter itself was rarely a stable polity, with powerful and insidious factions of ambitious mages in its magisterium scheming against one another for power, resulting in eras where civil war could rage across the country for decades at a time. Nevertheless, the Tevinter Imperium had become the undisputed rulers of the world, and as its magisters became ever more powerful, their ambitions evolved from the domination of the mortal plane to the domination of the divine. 395 years before the founding of the Chantry, a conclave of the Empire's most powerful mages engaged in an attempt to breach the veil, physically enter the Fade, and step foot in the Golden City, the seat of the gods, to become unto gods themselves. The end result of their hubris would bring about not only the downfall of their empire, but the greatest calamity to ever befall the land of Thedas. In our next video on the history of the world of Dragon Age, we're going to cover the rise of the Darkspawn, the First Blight, and the Rebellion of Andraste, so make sure you have subscribed and pressed the bell button. Please consider liking and sharing, this goes a long way to help us in the eyes of the almighty algorithm. We'll try to read and respond to every comment, as we want to see what you think about this video and which videos you hope to see in the future. Your feedback is very important to us. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.